Would I be the asshole if I vaccinate our child behind my husband's back? Okay. Spill it. What's your take on this mess? Is this okay? Comment your raw reactions or any wild drama you've survived. My husband, 32, male, and I, 32, female, had our first baby, 6 months old. Prior to the birth of our baby, I had always been vocal about vaccinating and trusting the advice of doctors, medical professionals, and scientists. My husband, on the other hand, is a skeptic. However, he seemed on board with vaccinating. So, when our baby was born, he received the recommended vaccinations at birth, 2 months and 4 months. Now, at 6 months, my husband has gone down a spiral and decided he does not want our child to receive any further vaccinations. This is despite the recent outbreaks of measles that have been reported. It is important to note that my husband has an autistic sibling who was nonverbal for years and struggled significantly as a child. My mother-in-law has made comments about vaccinations, which have led my husband down a rabbit hole of research, and now he is uncomfortable with vaccinating. Keeping an open mind and trying to be understanding of his concerns, I have listened to him and even read some of the articles he has found. Much of this material is not supported by independent research and consists mostly of testimonials from parents who had negative experiences with vaccines. He argues that pharmaceutical companies and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention go out of their way to remove information and discredit doctors who speak against vaccines. He also claims that the fact that you cannot sue vaccine manufacturers for vaccine-related injuries should be enough to convince me against them. I counter his arguments by stating that misinformation is dangerous and that vaccines are one of the most studied and regulated medical tools in existence. They are backed by decades of global research, real-world data, and the consensus of every major medical organization, including the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, World Health Organization, American Academy of Pediatrics, and countless pediatricians who vaccinate their own children. But this is still not enough for him, and he is convinced that the best thing is not to vaccinate. I have spoken with our child's pediatrician, who has offered to have a one-on-one conversation with him and was very understanding of his concerns, but he was not satisfied with the information she provided and said it was all just a regurgitation of what doctors are told to say. We have been going back and forth on this for weeks, and I am reaching the point where I am seriously considering vaccinating our child without him knowing. He is a very involved parent, and I do not want to make any important decisions without him, especially not medical decisions, but I feel like I am not getting anywhere with him. He has already said that if we have a second child, we will not be vaccinating them at all. To this, I have responded that if that is the case, I guess our baby will be an only child. Would I be the asshole if I choose to vaccinate despite his feelings? Commenter 1. He has an autistic brother and did not research that autism has a genetic component that he could, in fact, pass to his own children, but wants to die on the anti-vaccine hill that could potentially save his child's life. He is half-baked. However, you need to realize that it is too soon to tell if your child will have any neurodivergent tendencies, which means he is going to blame it on the vaccines instead of his genetics. Not the asshole. My great-grandmother's cousin got measles encephalitis and, as a result, had the capacity of a 2 to 4-year-old for the rest of her life. Even if vaccines caused autism, they absolutely do not. Most cases of autism are less severe than the damage caused by encephalitis. The problem with anti-vaxxers is that they are all too young to remember how awful these diseases can be. I have met very few boomers who were anti-vaccine, and the ones who were born at the very tail end. I have never met anyone older than a boomer who is anti-vaccine. Boomers, for the most part, lived pre-vaccination and had all the childhood illnesses. That is why we are pro-vaccination. We also remember how thrilled our parents and grandparents were when the polio vaccine came out. My parents thought vaccines were a godsend. I am a Xennial, but I had 2 babies in the pediatric intensive care unit with respiratory syncytial virus, one who nearly had to go on life-sustaining extracorporeal membrane oxygenation. When I saw the first news article announcing the vaccine, I started crying, thinking that other parents and children would not have to live the nightmare that we did. And unfortunately, for the part of me that believes in empathy for others, it makes me have no patience for anti-vaxxers. I have watched my 3-week-old baby gasping for a breath of air just before she was intubated, and the doctor explained the different muscle groups associated with breathing and said, "She has exhausted them all. And I am so grateful your family lives near a level 1 children's trauma center, because if you lived out in Central Oregon, we would be life-flighting her. And if you lived in Central America, she would be dying in your arms. That hospital stay also galvanized my passion for universal healthcare because we had excellent healthcare that paid for everything. But I knew how rare that was, having been a child who grew up with no insurance. I was talking to the child life coordinator one day about that dichotomy, and she said, in words I will never forget, families do not say no to that 4th round of chemotherapy for their child. They lose their house. I am so sorry for your experience and thank you for your compassion for others. I got the respiratory syncytial virus vaccine last week at 29 weeks, and I felt so lucky to be able to get it. Fingers crossed most people do. This thread has brought me to happy tears. Thank you both for your lovely empathy. I would feel the same way if I were in your shoes. The closest I have is being grateful for my daughter that she was able to get the human papillomavirus vaccine. She had some challenging years in her mid to late teens, and now there was one less worry. Virtual hugs to you both. Edited to add. I thought of another, the chickenpox vaccine. My goodness, I had it so badly in 2nd grade that it left scars on my face. I was bullied for those scars relentlessly. I would have given anything for a vaccination to prevent that. Good news here in the United Kingdom. The chickenpox vaccine is now to be rolled out for free for all children. Previously, you had to pay privately or be in a vulnerable group. I know this is behind the rest of Europe. Commenter 2. Think about it this way. If your baby gets sick or injured and your husband decides he does not trust doctors, so he does not want your baby to get any treatment, would you be an asshole for taking your baby to a doctor anyway? Obviously not. And it would be your husband who is not just an asshole but guilty of child abuse by medical neglect. Vaccination is no different. Your husband wants to abuse your child. Protecting your child from that abuse is not wrong. You are not the asshole. You are not being unreasonable for wanting to vaccinate your child. It is a responsible decision backed by science, and it is important to prioritize your child's health over unfounded fears. For anyone who wants to try to bring a loved one back into rational thought, find the year vaccines were invented and visit an old local cemetery for children. Have them note the years all these children died and how they tend to stop right at the year vaccines were invented. If anyone ever wonders if vaccines are safe and effective, the answer is quite literally written in stone. And if that is not enough, if they are too far gone, cut your losses. Speak to a lawyer if you need to and keep your family safe. Commenter 3. You should put the health and well-being of your child first. Call a lawyer. Then make an appointment for vaccinations. I am not joking about calling a lawyer. People who fall down the conspiracy rabbit hole rarely come back up for the air of rationality. He is just going to get worse, and before you know it, he is going to be insisting on the children drinking raw milk and refusing to let you put on sunscreen. This is the answer. 100%. No matter how much I love my husband, if he started drinking the conspiracy theory Kool-Aid, I would preemptively take steps to protect my children. I would still try to save him before he fell too deep, but I would also protect my children. Commenter 4. As has been hypothetically stated, get a lawyer. Make an appointment for vaccines. Prepare for divorce. Protecting your children is a reason to get divorced. Literally what I did. The icing on the cake. His mother hid my children's vaccine records from him for me. I have seen more than one marriage end recently because of conspiracy theories. It is sad, but it is unlikely this man will change his mind. In fact, he will probably become further entrenched in this. It is actually easier to unilaterally secure medical care for your child while still married. Pediatrician offices often require the consent of both parents when there is a joint custody order, but they never ask about the other parent's consent if the parents are still married. If the original poster does not otherwise want a divorce, she should just stop arguing and secretly get the vaccines done. Commenter 5. Protect your baby from disease. Your husband is a lunatic. If he does not like it, he can leave. And you might want to cut your mother-in-law out of your baby's life if she is making moves to endanger them. I worry for the autistic brother-in-law if this is how his mother feels. I hate to think what he has been subjected to. There are far too many horror stories of people's cures. Commenter 6. Vaccinate that baby, and if he says or does anything, put divorce on the table. Have him go with you to the pediatrician and let them explain the vaccines to him and how they are safe. If he will not stop, separate from him and give him the option of marriage counseling or divorce. On the off chance you do divorce, make sure you have proof of his conspiracy theories on vaccines and request full custody and full control over any and all healthcare and education decisions.